Hey, what's going on, you guys? In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I make Trippie Redd style beats. I would probably divide Trippie Redd's music into three basic characteristics. The first being the way he uses synthesizers and chord progressions, really coming from the R&B influence. The second thing is sort of using aggressive, repetitive, aggro kind of trap beats. The way he processes his sounds and goes for a generally lo-fi aesthetic. And the third thing is definitely the saturation. The way you put saturation to different elements, different sound effects, and the master bus in general. So we're going to get into all three things. If you're interested in music production topics, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this, and let's get right into it. So the first part of this beat that you heard in the intro of the video is obviously the synth group, which I have here. I'm using different synthesizers in this track, but you don't have to use the synthesizers I'm using. You could use basically anything you want. And I would actually divide this group into three separate parts. So the first part I'm going to get into is the most important part, which is the saw synthesizer. So saw is referring to the saw wave, the saw oscillator. It's a polysynth sound that I created with Omnisphere, but you could create it with really any VST. So this is using saw waves. I put on the unison effect on here, which is going to create a wider sound. So it's basically saw waves with a wider sound, and you're playing, obviously, chords. These chords really come from the genre of R&B because there's seventh chords, there's sixth chords, they're basic extensions that are played, as you can see, very close together. And that's a big part of it. And you can actually see the way this is played on a keyboard right here. All right, so you could obviously see there the chords were pretty simple. It was just an A flat major, seventh chord, turning into an F minor 7 chord. So it's really only two unique chords. And the third sound is actually a string sample. So right here, I've got basically a sample called Atmosphere Strings from Omnisphere. Again, you could use any string synthesizer or string sample you want. And it's really just creating this, what I call top line, which is a very high lead synth part that's just meant to sort of embellish the overall sound. It's actually mixed kind of low compared to the other elements. So you can hear it here. Here it is with everything. So there's the three elements together. I grouped all the synthesizers together and again put more saturation on them. And then I'm actually ducking them with the 808 and the kick, which we're going to get into right now. So if I go down here, we can find our 808 and kick. You take a darker sounding kick drum with no real clickiness or techno style sound design. You really want it to be like a lo-fi style hip hop kick. And you just combine that with an 808 sound. Typically a shortened one, I'm using Simpler through Ableton and then creating my own fade to kind of mimic the fade or the shortness of the 808 used in the Miss the Rage track. And then I process the kick and the 808 together, and by doing that, I can add more saturation to them. So as you can tell, it sounds a little more punchy and clear and present. Once I add the saturation plugins back in, it's going to become more flubby and distorted. So pretty simple. The pattern just repeats throughout. But like for instance, the hi-hat, I've got a saturation on it. The clap, I'm actually taking off the high end. I'm doing the same exact thing to the snare drum using the Ableton EQ. It's like the same exact curvature of the line there. I'm taking all the high frequencies out. I just found that helps it sit in the mix better. When I have different samples like this gunshot, I put this through a reverb and then put more saturation on it. I did the same thing with a basic reverse sound that I created. I just threw a bunch of different weird effects on it to make it more experimental. Because a lot of Trippie Redd samples and one-shots, and not just his vocal ad-libs, but just a lot of general random sounds might sort of sprout up at different parts of the mix. And you can see here I'm going to go to a compressor that's on the grouping of those synths. It's actually ducking out the synthesizers when the kick and the 808 hit, and that's going to allow the kick and the 808 to have dominance over the mix. And distortion's a big element of this, to be honest. Here on the master bus, I've got another tape emulation plugin, adding more saturation, more harmonics, kind of overwhelming the bass frequency so it gets more flubby. And then I'm just limiting it for loudness. So yeah, generally speaking, it's about those three things: the chords you pick, the way you process your sounds, and using more aggressive saturation and distortion. And if you found this video helpful at all, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe. If you're into music production topics, you'll find more videos like this one. And yeah, have fun making music.